What's up guys? Today's video is going to be all about a film emulation plugin called Dehancer. The Dehancer team recently reached out to me to ask if I wanted to try out their plugin and give them an honest review to help them improve their product. They're not paying me to make this video, they're not controlling what I say in this video. All they did was provide me with a license to use the plugin to make this review. What you're seeing on screen is what I've been able to achieve with the Dehancer plugin after just having used it for one day. What I want to do for you guys is give you my honest opinion of the Dehancer plugin and walk you through some of the settings and how they work. Dehancer is available for a variety of different editing software like Final Cut Pro and Adobe Premiere, but today we're going to be taking a look at Dehancer for DaVinci Resolve. Alright guys, real quick, if you like what you see in the demo today and you want to try out Dehancer for yourself, you can use my promo code Jeff to get 10% off at dehancer.com. But without further ado, let's jump straight into DaVinci Resolve so that I can give you guys a walkthrough of the Dehancer film emulation plugin. So right after you install Dehancer and you come into DaVinci Resolve, you're going to find it in the effects panel, and it's going to be at the very bottom of your effects list under the film emulation heading. So Dehancer requires your footage to be in Rec 709 in order for the features of Dehancer to work correctly. So what we're going to do is create two nodes here in our node tree, and we're going to call our first node Rec 709 LUT, and then we're going to call our second node Dehancer. And the clip that we're looking at on the left was shot on my DJI Osmo Pocket 3 in D-Log-M. So I'm going to come over to my first node, right click, go down to LUT, and then I'm going to search for DJI, and then I'm going to pick the Osmo Pocket 3 D-Log-M to Rec 709 conversion LUT. So essentially what this is doing is bringing our footage into a Rec 709 color space so that it behaves properly with the Dehancer plugin. Next, we're going to move over to the Dehancer node, and we're going to go into our effects panel and drag the Dehancer Pro effect onto our Dehancer node. So what this has done is it's given us all of the Dehancer settings over on the right side of the screen, and I'm going to change up my interface a little bit so that I remove some of the DaVinci tools that we're not going to be using today so that it's easier for you guys to follow along. So first, I'm going to pop out my scopes into a separate window so that we have them visible at all times. And then I'm going to press Shift S on my keyboard, which is going to give us a larger area to view our image that we're adjusting today. So the first thing you probably notice about this clip is that it's got this greenish blue tint to it. And that's because by default, the Dehancer settings already have a bunch of things enabled which are affecting the image right off the bat. So the first thing I like to do in the Dehancer settings is scroll down to the bottom. And under the options section, I like to click on disable all tools, which is going to allow us to work with the Dehancer plugin from scratch. So our image is back to our Rec 709 color space, and that's exactly what we want. The next thing I like to do is collapse all of these menus in Dehancer so that I can see them one at a time. And it's also going to be easier as I'm walking you guys through the different features of Dehancer. So I'm going to hold down Alt on my keyboard and click on any of the headings on the right side, and that's going to collapse all of the sections of the Dehancer plugin. So the first section we're going to take a look at is Input. And the input section of Dehancer has a source option right here. Currently it's set to Rec 709, which means that whatever footage we're feeding into the Dehancer node needs to be in Rec 709 format. If you don't have a Rec 709 conversion LUT like I do, what Dehancer does is it provides a section down below right here, which is like the color space transform feature in DaVinci Resolve. So I can show you what I mean by this. If I click on this menu right here, Dehancer gives me the option to choose which camera I shot this clip with. Then it gives me the option to select a certain vendor for my camera. So in this case, it's DJI. And then it lets me choose exactly what camera I use to capture this footage with. In this case, it's the Pocket 3, and the format I shot with is D-Log-M. Now the footage looks a little bit funny right now because what I have in my node tree is a Rec 709 LUT being applied right here, and then I'm also applying another Rec 709 conversion in the Dehancer node. So if I disable the first node, we're back to a Rec 709 because the Dehancer plugin is taking care of our conversion for us. but I tend to like to have my Rec 709 conversion done in a separate node. So I'm going to turn that node back on, and then in Dehancer, I'm just going to select source Rec 709 instead of doing the conversion in the plugin itself. So the next thing we're going to take a look at are these settings right here, also in the input section. So Dehancer gives us the ability to adjust the exposure, temperature, and tint of our image before any effects of Dehancer have been applied to our clip. The defringe and defringe radius, I think, refer to adjusting the chromatic aberration of your footage, but I'm not too familiar with chromatic aberration, so I'm just going to avoid talking about those settings today. But right off the bat, my clip looks pretty good when I'm looking at the scopes. It's not overly exposed and it's not too underexposed, but I do want to kind of bring the highlights down a little bit. So this section of the scopes that we're looking at right here refers to the sky portion of my image, and I'd like to have it sitting somewhere between the 768 and the 896 lines. So we're going to grab our exposure compensation and start dragging it down until our scopes match what I'm looking for. And then as I'm looking at my image, it looks a little bit cool to my eye. And generally I like to have my footage looking a little bit warmer. So I'm going to come over to the temperature compensation in the input area, and I'm going to drag that slider up just a little bit. So maybe to right there. And then as I'm looking at the footage, it still has a little bit of a green tint to it. So I'm going to use my tint compensation and drag this up just a little bit to remove some of that green. So maybe we'll go to about right there. And then that's all I'm going to do with my input section of the Dehancer plugin. So we're going to move on to the film section now. And I would say the film section and the print section are the bread and butter of the Dehancer plugin. This is probably what most people are subscribing to Dehancer to use. And the film and the print section are going to really drive home that film emulation that Dehancer is known for. So in the film section, I'm going to enable this feature and click on this menu here. And you can see that Dehancer provides a lot of film profiles for us to select from. Way too many for me to go through in one video, but I'll click through a few of them so that you can see how our image changes when I select different film profiles. Go through one more. Here's Kodak Portra 160. One that I've been liking is the Kodak Ektar 25 1996. And so the reason why I like this film profile is because it has a warmer look to it, but also for some reason the profile gives me nostalgic vibes. Like, it reminds me of childhood photos that my parents took of me that are in photo albums at their house. So maybe that's why I lean a little bit more towards this Kodak Ektar 25. So we're going to move on from the film section now and go into the film developer section. So our image looks pretty flat right now, but as we start to go through the film developer section and the print section, you're going to see our image come to life. So I have to enable the film developer section by checking that box. And the first thing I'm going to adjust is the contrast boost. So I'm going to slide this slider all the way to the right and then to the left so that you guys can see how my image gets affected when I adjust the slider. And I'm just going to add a little bit of contrast to my image just to darken the blacks and pull out the highlights a little bit. So maybe we'll sit right there. The next slider below is the gamma correction slider, and this allows you to lift the lows and the mids of your image to compensate for some of the contrast boosts that you might have added to the image or removed from the image. So I'll slide the gamma correction all the way to the right, and you can see my shadows and my midtones start to lift up. And if I slide it to the left, you can see those shadows and the midtones start to go down a little bit. So actually, I think everything was looking pretty good to me right here. I might just slide the gamma correction up just a tad. And then the color separation slider, I'll move to the left and the right, and it doesn't really have that much effect on my image, so I'm not gonna make any changes to that. I'm gonna leave it at the default of 100. And the color boost is something I definitely wanna draw your guys' attention to, because I think this is where your image really starts to come to life, when you add some color boost to the image. So if I drag the slider to the right, you can start to see some saturation getting added to my image. If I drag it to the left, my image becomes less saturated. So what I'm gonna do is probably put the color boost somewhere in between the mid and the high points. Maybe right there. Don't wanna make it too saturated. Let me blow the image up a little bit so I can have a look. Yeah, I think that looks pretty good to me. I'm trying to pay more attention to the really colorful areas of the footage to see if they look too artificial or if it seems within reason. Okay, so we're gonna leave our film developer section now and move on to film compression. So film compression isn't something that I would use every time, but what it does is it takes the highlights of your footage and brings them down closer to the midpoints of your footage. So I'll show you what this does by turning on the film compression. So what I want you guys to pay attention to is this area right here in our scope, which is representing the sky in our footage. So if I drag the film compression impact up, it's gonna pull down that highlighted portion of our footage closer to the midtones. And if I drag it the opposite direction, it's gonna raise the highlighted parts of our footage up even more. So what I'm gonna do is just raise it a little bit, just past that 768 line. And we're gonna leave it right there. And the white point slider is going to adjust the ceiling of our highlights. So if we set the ceiling of our highlights to, for example, this line right here, 896, it means that any highlights that we add to our footage won't be able to exceed this point of our scope. So let's see, let's take the white point and drag it up. Actually, no, we're gonna leave it where it is because I don't want our sky to be too bright in our footage. The tonal range appears to affect the range at which the film compression is applied, but I don't know too much about this right now, so I'm not going to really play around with that, and I'm just gonna leave it at the default. And then the color density slider, if I move that back and forth, it doesn't have too much of an effect on my image, so we're gonna leave that at the default as well. All right, so we're done with our film compression section, and we're gonna move on to the expand section now. So the expand section has two sliders, black point and white point. We already talked about white point in our film compression above. It sets the ceiling for your highlights. So black point does the opposite, where it sets the floor for your shadows. So if I drag the black point to the left here, after I enable the setting, it's gonna drag the floor of my shadows according to the scope so that the darkest points of my footage can't go below this point right here. And if I drag the slider all the way to the right, it lowers the floor for the shadows and allows my footage to be a lot darker. So we'll reset that back to the default. And I'm actually gonna drag my black point up just a little bit so we get a little slight darker image to work with here. All right, so we're gonna leave the expand section and move on to the print section now. So we're gonna turn this on, and the print section gives us a few different profiles to work with. It gives us a linear profile, which doesn't have any effect on our image. It's just our standard image here. And then it gives us a Cineon film log, a Fujifilm 3513, a Kodak 2383, and a Kodak Endura glossy paper. So the one that I think a lot of people gravitate towards is the Kodak 2383. And I do like this print profile because it gives my image a bit of a warmer look compared to the Kodak 3513, for example. So we're gonna go with Kodak 2383 today, and then we're gonna play around with some of these sliders below here in the print section. So the target white is used to adjust your white balance within a certain range. So I think the target white affects something like 5,000 Kelvin to 6,500 Kelvin. So if you notice that your image is a little bit too warm, you can drag it to the right and it'll cool down your image. And if you notice that your image is a bit too cool, you can drag it to the left and it'll warm up your image a little bit. So let's put it right here. We don't want our image to be too warm. We already adjusted some temperature settings above. Exposure value, this allows you to change exposure here within the print section. So we're going to leave it maybe right here because I don't want our sky to be too blown out. Tonal contrast, we have another contrast slider within the print section. Actually, let's set it right here. Okay, and then color density is another really important slider. It's kind of like the color boost slider from the film developer section, but instead we have another option to increase the intensity of our colors in the print section. So if I drag the color density all the way up and then all the way down, you can see the richness of our colors changes. So let's, actually I kind of liked it how it was when it was just the default. So we're not going to change the color density here. And then the last section of the color grading in Dehancer is the color head section. So if I turn this on, we've got a bunch of sliders here to let you push your image into the yellow or the blue or magenta, green, like you guys understand this. I'll just talk quickly about the shadows tone, mid-tone, and highlight tone sliders. So if you want your shadows to have more of a cooler temperature, you can use the shadows tone and move your slider to the left and it'll make your shadows more cool. If you push it to the right, it warms up your shadows. And the same effect happens for the mid-tones and the highlight tone sliders. So we're actually going to disable the color head section because we're not going to use that. And so we're done with our color grade at this point. And this is what our image looks like after we've done all our color grading. We'll just play a little bit here. So the next section we're going to move on to are more of the stylistic choices that you might want to add to your footage to make it emulate film. So we're going to start with the film grain section, and I will turn this on and zoom into my footage so that you guys can see what the film grain looks like. We have a slider here to adjust the amount of grain in our film, and we have a bunch of profiles that we can choose from here. So everything from 8mm ISO 50 up to 65mm ISO 500. I generally don't like a ton of grain in my image, so I'm going to choose 35mm ISO 50, and then I'm going to change the amount to be pretty low actually. So maybe something around there. Okay, let's blow up our image and see what this looks like. So just a bit of grain to add a bit of texture. Not too much. All right, so we're done with our grain section, and we're going to move on to our halation section next and turn this on. One thing about the film grain section and halation section that I noticed was if you enable both these at the same time, sometimes it uses a lot of processing power in your computer, and you can notice that the frame rate of your playback in DaVinci Resolve drops significantly. But once you export your footage and you play back the exported video file, you don't experience that lag. So just something to note. So we were talking about the halation section, and just like the film grain, Dehancer gives you a bunch of halation profiles to work with, like 8mm, 16mm, 35, and 65. So we're gonna be pretty conservative with our halation today and just add a little bit to our footage. So the part of the footage that I'm going to look at is right here where this black strap and the gray sweater meet. And we're going to see if we can just get a little bit of a red glow to come out of there. Might have to lower our halation profile to maybe 16mm. So something like that where you see a little bit of glow in the contrasty areas of the footage. Let's see what that looks like. All right, yeah, I think that looks pretty good. Okay, now we're gonna move on to the bloom section. And so bloom is gonna add a glowing type effect to our footage once I enable it. So there's bloom on and bloom off. So because I already turned on the halation, I don't really feel like I need the bloom to help soften my footage. So for now, we're just gonna leave the bloom turned off. And then I'm gonna kind of go through these last few sections pretty quickly because these aren't really effects that I would use too frequently in my footage. So the first one is the film damage. If I turn this on and then change it to the most intense film damage, 8mm, and turn the total amount up, you can see that the film damage adds some scratches and dust and hair to the footage. And it's a very specific style choice. So I don't think I would use this very often, but I can see it having a time and place for certain people. So we're going to turn film damage off and move on to film breath. And the film breath, when it's enabled, will start to create this flickery effect in your footage. Let me change the profile to 8mm so that it's more intense. So you can see the colors of the footage are changing frame to frame, and that's what the film breath is doing. We're going to disable film breath and go to gate weave and turn this on, and then change the profile to 8mm so you can see what the gate weave does in its most intense form. So it gives the footage this shaky feel, which is a little bit distracting in my opinion. So I probably won't be using the gate weave today, and probably won't be using it for the majority of my footage that I color grade. Moving on to Overscan. If I turn this on, you can see that the Overscan effect adds this border characteristic to our footage. So you can see perforation holes for the film that we're trying to emulate here. And once I do the playback with the Overscan applied, you can see this is where my playback really gets bogged down. I think I might have too many effects enabled right now. Okay, so we're going to turn Overscan off. We're going to go to Vignette, turn that on. And Dehancer has a really cool mask mode in the vignette, so you can see exactly where the vignette circle is, and you can adjust the size of it, and you can adjust the aspect ratio to fit your needs. So turn the mask off, and then change the exposure settings, make it brighter, make it darker. So I think what I'll do in this case is just darken the edges slightly to about right there. All right. So we're almost done here. There's the monitor section where we have clipping indication, which we do have some crushing of our shadows going on, indicated by all the blue information on the screen right now. If we had clipping of our highlights, you would see red on the screen. So this is a really good way for you to judge whether or not your footage is underexposed or overexposed. We also have the false color feature, which shows you where the darkest parts and the lightest parts of your image are. So anything that's this purplish color will be the darkest parts of your footage. Anything that's this orangey red color will be the brightest parts of your footage. And all the colors in between just represent your midtones. So we're going to turn monitor off. And then the last section I'm going to talk about here is the output, which is basically like the global blend of your Dehancer plugin. So right now we have the total impact set to 100. If we wanted to dial down the intensity of our Dehancer effects, we could lower this slightly. And if we wanted to turn off all of the effects, we could just lower the slider all the way down. We've got the last section here, LUT Generator. So if you're happy with the kind of look that you achieve with the Dehancer plugin, you can actually export it as a LUT to apply to other footage in the future. And then we have our options section, which we briefly talked about at the beginning, where I disable all of my tools at the beginning. This is also where you go to activate your license. So let's make our image larger and have a final look at what we've achieved using the Dehancer film emulation and color grading plugin. So I think that looks pretty good. I've actually tried to do film emulation without Dehancer before, just using the free version of DaVinci Resolve. And I will say it's really difficult to achieve a look like what you're seeing on the screen right now. I've experimented a lot with using multiple nodes in the DaVinci node tree. I've tried to use free versions of grain overlay to achieve this look, and I haven't even really gotten close to what I've been able to achieve with Dehancer Pro. So I think it's a really cool plugin. If you're trying to achieve that film emulation look, it provides a lot of tools to help you get there. And as you just saw, it didn't take me very long to get my image to look like it was shot on an analog camera. All right, so there's just one other thing I wanted to mention, and it was another product that Dehancer offers, and it's called Dehancer Online. So if you're into taking photos and you want to get that filmic look for your photos, Dehancer has a product called Dehancer Online, where you can go to online.dehancer.com, and as long as you have a subscription to Dehancer, you can use this service to upload a photo, and Dehancer has all of these different film profiles that you're seeing on the screen, and you can easily apply these to your image and also modify your image to suit your style taste. So I've already uploaded an image right here, and I'm just gonna pick one of the featured film profiles like Fujichrome CDU. So you can see my photo that I've uploaded to Dehancer Online. You have the ability to go up to the effects at the top and turn off the grain if that's something you don't want. You can turn off the halation if you don't want that. If you wanted to brighten your image, there's a light tool where Dehancer will give you a bunch of different preset options for changing the brightness of your image. So if I wanted my image to look something like this one right here, I just click on this, and if I'm happy with it, then I click on export and it saves my image to my computer. So that's pretty much it for the Dehancer film emulation and color grading plugin. I've been really happy with the results that I've been able to achieve so far, and I just wanted to give a shout out to Dehancer for reaching out to me and asking me if I wanted to try out their plugin. It's definitely something I'm going to be incorporating into my color grading process for a bunch of my clips in the future. So that's going to do it for me. We'll see you guys in the next one.